Hi, this month we're going to be working on I Won't Back Down by Tom Petty. It's one of my favorite songs he ever did, and it was actually the song that was voted on for this month over at my Patreon page, which you can find the link in the description below. The tabs will be shown on the screen here as we're working through it, but if you want access to the PDF as well as other lessons and live lesson features, all sorts of stuff like that, please check out that Patreon and consider joining if you haven't already. So let's just go ahead and dive right into the song. What you're going to notice is the way that I did this arrangement is meant to get more difficult as it goes. So the beginning of the song is going to be more tuned for a beginner, and as it goes through, it will get more advanced, sort of leaving people with the opportunity to work on different sections at different paces. And so when you're first playing it, if it's really simple, it'll get harder at the end, and it's a cool way to kind of cascade the difficulty. Let's go ahead and start right there at measure 1. So we're going to start with an E minor chord, but it's not quite an E minor. What we're going to do is take our ring finger, place on the 4th fret of the C string, our middle finger, place on the 3rd fret of the E string. We're going to leave the A string open, so our index finger is not going to be placed there on the 2nd fret like it usually would for an E minor. And for this, we're just going to take our thumb on our strumming hand. We're going to strum through all 4 strings. Now the next chord there is a D, and it's only partially a D in the sense that we're not playing the A string. Now the ideal way to play this would be to take your index finger and bar it across the G, C, and E strings with a bend coming up off the finger to omit the A and leave it open. This is a very difficult way of playing a D chord and sort of something that I think is a good idea to work into. And it's kind of like yoga, you know, if you feel like your finger is not flexible enough to do it right now, that doesn't mean it's not capable of doing it ever. But for now, if this version of the D is too difficult, it's totally fine to have it be played with just our index finger, middle finger, and ring finger, like you might normally play a D chord, just like this. And another way of doing that even is like this, with our index, ring, and middle. So a lot of different ways of doing it. You'll notice throughout the video I will be using my index finger here to try to get that comfortable. So after we play that sort of E minor, we play that D chord. We're going to strum through with our thumb and stop right at that A string. And then we're going to go to a G chord, and we're going to play through the G, C, and E strings, stopping at the A. So you notice we won't play the A string, so the thumb can go ahead and go through and then catch right before that A string. Rather catch on that A string so that you don't go all the way through. So measures 1 and 2 sound like, and then it repeats. Pretty cool. So now we get into the meat and potatoes of the song. We go with the Well, I Won't Back Down, right? So we're going to start here by playing 2 on the A string, and then we're going to play 5 on the A string, using my index and then pinky fingers. But then I'm going to slide my index finger all the way up to the 7th fret over the C, E, and the A strings with that bar. I'm going to play just those 3 strings with my thumb. So it's Well, I Won't. Now we're going to play this bar move down 2 frets, so that's on 5, and then add the middle finger on 6 of the C string. Now what's really, really important as you do this is to make sure that that middle finger is nice and upright so that it's not touching and relaxed on the E string. We want it very, very much perpendicular to the fretboard while that index finger is barred. And if you notice that it's too difficult to have that index finger barred all the way across 5 like it was 7, it's okay for it to come down to just be barred over the E and the A strings with that middle finger here on the 6th fret of the C string. You'll notice this is very similar to a B flat chord, which you might have played before or might have struggled with because it's kind of a pain in the butt chord. But this is a good way to practice it as well as get extra practice with just this shape in general. So again, curve there, coming up and over here. We're going to play just the C, E, and A there. So that's back. So we have Well, I Won't Back. And now we're going to play a G chord, and we can do one of 2 things. One is we can keep that bar and just slide it down to 2 with our index finger over the C, E, and A, and add the middle finger on the 3rd fret of the E string. And if we do that, it's all right there. We can play the C, E, and A together. But if you're more comfortable with a G chord in the typical way, with the index finger on 2 of the C, ring finger on 3 of the E, and middle finger here on 2 of the A, that's okay too. Cool. So we have, well, I won't back down. Now the next part, we're going to start with the open G and then open A. If you're playing with a low G ukulele, you'll need to make sure you use 3 on the E instead of the 0 on the G because of that low G. After that, we're going to play an E minor chord. We're going to have 4 with our ring finger here on the C string, 3 on the middle, 3 on the E with our middle finger, and our index here at 2 on the A. We're going to strum through the C, E, and A strings together. Now we're going to go to another one of those little partial D chords, but this time what's cool is I still prefer doing that one finger method. But if that's tricky, it's okay to take your index, place it on the 2nd fret of the C, and middle, place it on the 2nd fret of the E, because we're not playing the G string this time. So if we strum through the C, E, and A like that, what's nice is we can then just kick our middle finger out to the 3rd fret of the E string, play just the C and E strings together using our thumb, stopping at the A. So that's no, I won't back down. Pretty cool, right? So from this point, we're going to go into the next section of the melody. You'll notice it's somewhat repetitive, but with this immediate next measure being a little bit different. We're going to be playing the same melody notes of this B and this D note, but because of the situation, we're actually going to play them up here at 7 this time. So at this moment where you see 7, we actually want our bar to already be across on the C, E, and the A strings. We're going to play the C on the E. Then we're going to add our pinky onto the 10 of the E string. And then we're going to take our pinky off, play through the C, E, and A strings all on 7. Then we're going to play our pinky on 10 again. So what that is you can stand me. And then from this point, we're going to go slide that bar down to 5, add the middle finger on 6 of the C, just like we did before. So it's okay for that index finger to come down a little bit, make it easier. And that's going to be up. So far what we have is you can stand me up. And now we're going to do a little pull-off technique. We're going to add the ring finger on 7 of the E. We're going to play that, and then we're going to pull it off to the 5 on the E there. Now that pull-off can be a little bit tricky. So in the description below, I added a video that talks about hammer-ons, pull-offs, and some other embellishments. So if you struggle with a pull-off like that, go ahead and check out that video, see if that helps. But after we do that pull-off, we're going to do the hardest part of the whole song. Take our fretting hand away, use our playing hand, strum through the C, E, and A all open. Then we're going to play the G string, and then the G string again, then the G string 2 more times. And that's if you're on a high G ukulele. If you're on a low G, you'll want to play the 3 on the E instead for each one of those G notes. What that looks like is something like this. We have up at the gates of hell, but I. Pretty sweet, right? Now we're on measure 11, and what we do there for that won't back down is going to be the same as the second won't back down that we worked on. So we're going to play the E minor, just the C, E, and A, won't, then the D, C, E, and A, back, and then the G, just the C and E, down. And that's going to be exactly the same as what we played on measure 7 there. So pretty cool. Now at this point in the song, it's actually going to repeat that whole melody phrase with the new lyrics. So what it was, well, I won't back down, no, I won't back down. You can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. We're now going to be going with the next section here, which is I will stand my ground, won't be turned around, and I'll keep this world from dragging me down, gonna stand my ground. So we're going through that whole section, and what we'll do here is we'll just play the exact same part. And so it's a repeat all the way through. Pretty cool. So now from this point, we can get to measure 14, which is sort of the second ending. So after we've done the repeat, you'll notice that there's a little number 1 above, and that's the first ending, and then another number 2, and that's going to be the second ending. So we're going to pick up from the second ending, which is what you play the second time through. You're going to play the open G, and then the open E, I, and then the E minor again, won't, back, down, same part. But now we're going to the chorus, and this is going to be quite a bit different. So the way that we start this is we're going to play with our pinky to give our pinky some exercise here. We're going to play 5 on the A, then go up to 7 on the A, and back down to 5 on the A. So a lot of pinky work. And that can be tricky, and in a lot of ways, it's not the most efficient way. I think it's just a really good opportunity to move the pinky a lot. But if you're struggling with that, the most efficient way will be to use the index finger on 5, then add the ring on 7, then back down to the index on 5. But again, the reason I mentioned the pinky is most people struggle with getting that pinky involved enough, so it can be a good exercise. But after we play the 5, 7, 5, we're going to take our pinky, play it fret 10 on the A string, and we're going to strum through all 4 strings with our thumb. Okay, so that's hey. Now we're going to slide this pinky down to 5, add our index on 2 of the C, and our middle here on 3 of the E, and strum through all 4. Now we want this to be a little bit softer than the hey, because this is a melody note, hey. This G chord is a little bit of a filler, so it's really important to play it just a little bit less pronounced, so that we know for this next chord, which is a D chord, we're going to leave our pinky here at 5, bar our index all the way across 2 on the G, C, E strings. We're going to strum through that, and that's bay, and then B is going to slide the pinky up to 7 on the A. So that goes hey, bay, B. Now ideally when you're playing something like this, what you actually want to do is try to leave the fingers in position till they have to move. So when we're up here and we slide down to that 5, we play this chord, and then immediately we play this chord, and then we play the 7 on the A. Notice how I took my index finger away. Ideally, I don't want to do that. Ideally, I'd like to play that D chord and then slide the pinky up. Now, that can be a bit of a stretch, right? Barring across 2 and sliding up to the 7th fret, that can take a lot of practice. But it's something that's worthwhile to do, because you'll notice that when you have all of the notes ringing, it'll make the arrangement sound more full, because the chords now are giving more to the sound. And this can apply to all the different songs you play, in the sense of if you're doing a chord melody, you want to make sure that the chords and melody are always kind of working together and not necessarily independent of one each other, right? Sometimes you want that in certain sounds and certain songs, but most of the time you want those chords to continue ringing as the melody notes are played, which sometimes means difficult stretches going up the uke. So after we play that 7 on the A, we're then going to go back down to our D chord here, 2, 2, 2, 5, index finger barred across 2. And then we're going to play a G chord. Now the easiest way to play a G chord in this situation is to move the index finger down to be over the C, E, and A barred across 2, and adding the middle finger here on the 3rd fret of the E string. Now you can play your G chord as you normally would, but I like doing this because we're coming from that bar. Right? Kind of cool. So we've got this to the G, and then we're going to play a C chord, and if we played our G like this, we could just kick our middle finger down to the 3rd fret on the A string and strum through that. Now we're going to slide our pinky up to 7 on the A, and we're going to play that There Ain't No E's, and then we're going to play the pinky on 5, E way. So we go with that C chord, there ain't no easy way, right? Now on out, we're going to play the D chord again, 2, 2, 2, 5, so bar all the way across the 2nd fret of the G, C, and E strings. We're going to do a pull off with our pinky down to 2, and then we're going to play 2 on the G. And that's a tricky, tricky thing, right? Because getting that pull off with the pinky is tough, and then hitting that G, but it sounds so cool. So playing through that whole chorus section so far, what we have is something like this. We have Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Right? Now to continue that on 19, we're going to play a D chord. So you notice our index finger is already barred across the 2 there. Add the pinky on 5. And then we're going to play a G chord. And with this G chord, we can play it the way I was talking about before, which is super efficient, or we can play it normal. It doesn't matter too much, because here at measure 20 on the next section, we're going to start the chorus essentially over. We're going to move our pinky all the way back up to 10 on the A. So here at measure 20 with 10 on the A, we play that, and then we go down to this G chord, again sliding that pinky down to 5. And then we're going to bar across 2 with the index finger, leaving the pinky where it is. And then slide the pinky up to 7. Now instead of playing all the chords that we typically would at this part, all that we do is play 2 on the C, which should be there already in the bar. And we're going to play an E minor chord, just the C, E, and A strings, 4, 3, and 2 with our ring, middle, and index. And that's stand, and then that D chord that we played earlier, my, and then the G chord, which is only 2 notes that we played for ground. So again, that's. Now what's really interesting about this from a timing perspective is if you know how to read music or are trying to learn, you'll notice that most of the time in the song we'll have a rest followed by the melody note. And that's one thing that creates the really cool sound of the song. It's almost like a hiccup that occurs, right? Where it goes, this little pause followed by the chord. But in this section, which is the section that sort of closes out the chorus and is very similar to the end of the song, it sort of initiates the repeat, you'll notice that you're going to have that chord on the first beat. There's no rest right away. And that's something that I believe is really important because I think it's something that's used to really drive home this melody and the meaning behind these lyrics. And even though we're not playing the lyrics because, you know, we're playing a solo ukulele, I think it makes it even more important to enunciate this correctly and really get that downbeat on this last won't back down. So we play that E minor right away on that beat, and that's stand my ground. Now we get to 23, we're going to play open G, and then open A, and I, and then we're going to play the E minor, won't, and back down, right? Same thing that we played before, which is pretty cool. So after this at measure 25, what we're now looking at is repeating the song. We're going back to that original verse, but we're not playing it the same way. And that's why you'll notice in the tab, we still have a lot more to go. Even though we've technically kind of played all of the song, this next section is going to be a more difficult version that sort of builds on what we were working on before, incorporating more strumming and more kind of energy, which I think works really well within the confines of this song. So now taking a look at measure 25, let's go ahead and dive right in. We're going to start with the 2 on the A and the 5 on the A, just like we played earlier in the song. And now at this point, we're going to initiate kind of a strumming sequence of keeping our hand moving for most of this next section. You'll want to make sure you're really comfortable with these 2 cymbals. This one, which is the down strum, and this one, which is the up. You'll want to make sure as well that when you're counting this, you know that a down strum is always followed by an up strum, even if that's your hand missing the strings. And an up strum is always followed by a down strum, even if you're missing the strings. So 2 down strums in a row should have your hand moving back up in between. And the same with 2 up strums in a row should have your hand moving down in between. I'll try and talk about each one of those as we go through. But after we play the 2 and 5, we're then going to chunk over all 4 strings. And then we're going to bar across 7 on the C, E, and A strings with our index finger. We're going to take our index and we're going to strum down. So we have. Now, if chunking is something that's difficult for you, I've actually put a video in the below that talks a little bit about chunking in case that's a technique that you struggle with. But it's okay with those X's to also just mute the strings with your left hand, or your fretting hand rather, to create the same sort of effect. So both work. Then we're going to do another chunk. Then we're going to slide down to bar across 2 on the G, C, and E strings, and the A as well, but the pinky is going to have the A's responsibility here at the 5th fret. And we're going to do an up strum. And then we're going to switch to a G chord, which we can play it our typical way, or that way that we introduced earlier with the bar with the index here as well as the middle. We're going to do another up strum here. So it's important between those to go up on the D, miss coming down, switch to the G, come up. So far we have now to start 27, we're going to miss going down and we're going to go up, down, up, down. Now that up, down, we want to be treated as filler. So we want to play it a little bit more quiet because it's not part of the melody, but it helps add that sort of layer and complexity that sounds really nice. Pretty cool. Then we're going to play the open G and open A. And if you're playing a low G, make sure you use the 3 on the E instead there. We're going to do a chunk. And we're going to play an E minor in its entirety of 0, 4, 3, 2, ring, middle, and index fingers on the C, E, and A. Down strum, do a chunk. Then we're going to play a D chord the way that we were talking about earlier in the video. Index finger barred across the G, C, and E strings, coming off with the A string exposed. What can really help with that is if you notice your little notch here, that's where your finger will bend the most. Fingers aren't meant to be bent backwards, right? So where it will bend will be right about there. So if your E string goes right in that position there, it can help keep that A string exposed. We're going to do an up strum there. We're going to miss coming down, then we're going to play a G chord up and miss up, down, down. So same exact sequence off that G chord. So that part sounds like. Now at measure 29 at the end, going into measure 30, we're going to play 2 and then 5. And now at this point, what's interesting is we're going to be moving towards a thumb picking just like we did before. So we're going to play through the 7 on the C, E, and A strings together with our thumb. So not strumming this part. And we're actually going to play it the same way we did before. Now what's really important with these two measures, going from 30 and 31, is they are a little bit quieter than the strumming. So it's important to try to consider the way that you play them and the timing with it and the volume that you play them with, because if you play them the exact same way you did the first time through the song, it might sound a little bit out of place. So I like to really drive them and make them a little bit louder than I did the first time. So it sounds something like. And then going into 32, we're going to chunk. And then we're going to do a down on that E minor chord, chunk, and then we're going to come up on the D chord, miss, and then come up on the G chord. And the same fill, up, down, up, down. So that whole section, starting from the end of 29, going through to the repeat will be. Now what's great about this is it then just repeats this section. So we go back to measure 26, go all the way through until we get to the second ending. And on the second ending, it's the same filler. And then we're going to play the open G, or the 3 on the E if you're playing low G, then the open E string, chunk, then we're going to play an E minor chord, down, chunk, then we're going to come up on the D chord, miss, and come up on the G chord. Now on 36 here, we've got more of that filler, but it's a little bit different this time because we're trying to incorporate fills that have this ascending feel going into the chorus. So what we do here is we go up, down, all on that G, and then we're going to go up, down, adding 5 on the A string with the pinky, up, down. Now that stretch can be kind of difficult, so it's okay to play the G chord a different way, using the bar across 2 with the middle finger on 3, but I do recommend trying to get comfortable with that stretch. So up, down on that 5, and then up on a normal G chord. So 36 should sound something like. Now at this point we're going to 38, which is the chorus, and it's pretty active here. I think this is the hardest part of the song, starts to move quite a bit. We're going to start by sliding our pinky up to 10, and we're going to add our middle finger on 8 of the E string. So we have 0, 0, 8, 10. We're going to do a down strum. We're going to bring our hand back up. Then we're going to do what's called a ghost note. And all that ghost note is taking your thumb and playing the G string as if you're strumming, but instead of going across all 4 strings, just striking that single G. It's one of the coolest techniques in the ukulele because it's so simple, but it can really start to add a lot of sound to whatever we're strumming. So we're going to be using it quite a bit with this section here. So it's really important to get comfortable with. So we've got our down, miss, ghost, and then up, then another ghost note. And then we're going to slide our pinky and our middle finger, both of them, down so that we have 5 and then 3. We'll add the index finger here on 2 of the C. So you see that's the same shape slid down, just adding that 2 on the C string for the G chord. Do an up strum there, and a ghost note. So that looks something like this. And then we're going to switch to the D chord, leaving the pinky here on 5, bar across 2 with the index finger, up, then a ghost note, and then we're going to slide up to 7 and do an up strum here. You'll notice the only thing that's written is the A string, but if you accidentally hit the E and the C and kind of get a little bit more there, that's okay, because we're trying to strum this more, and it really gives a cool melody sound. So we now have. Now at this point, we're going to slide back down to the 5 on the A string. We're going to go up, down, up, and then we're going to go down on a G chord. So this whole section is pretty rich. We're just working on 2 measures so far with that, but it should sound something like this. Now we go to measure 39. We're going to play through a C chord, do a down strum there. I like to kick my index finger here on 3, because then I'm going to slide the pinky out here, do 7 on the A, play that 3 times, then a down strum, then we're going to play 5. We're going to slide the pinky down to 5, play that twice, then a down strum here on the D chord, barring across 2, just like we did in the earlier part of this section. And we're going to pull off to 2 on the A. Then we're going to do a ghost note, which is really a melody note here because we're getting that A melody note. So that's, starting at 39. Now what we do from this point is we go on that D chord, down, down, then we come up on a G chord, and then we do a ghost note. Now we're going on to measure 41, which is almost the same as measure 37, which is the start of this section. So pinky on 10, middle finger here on 8, down, ghost, up, ghost, switch to the G, sliding the pinky down and the middle finger down, adding the index finger, 2, 3, 5, ghost, and then we're going to play that D chord bar all the way across 2, up, and the ghost note, and then up on the 7, and then we're going to rest here, and then we're going to do a down strum on 2, 2, 2, 5. Now, at this point, we're into the end of the song, and that section that we were just working on is crazy. There's a lot of movement. So make sure that you use the WAV file. If you've signed up on the Patreon, you'll get access to a computer-generated, the tab program that I use basically will play this. And that can give you the exact timing. That can be really important when you're working through this. So again, if you haven't already, please check out that Patreon page for more stuff, including the full tab. But as you're working on this section, what's really important is just consistency. trying to work on the parts nice and slow. You'll notice throughout this, I don't play the timing perfect when I'm teaching you and moving through this. And one of the reasons for that is because I'm trying to make sure that the way that I move through this is more understandable. And it's really important to keep everything, consistent in the fact that there are no wasted movements. Sometimes I might hold one down strum a little bit longer than an up as I'm working through it, so that my brain can sort of catch up to where I am. And that's what I like to do when I'm working on this to make sure it's comfortable. Do we want to put on a metronome and play with this? Yeah, eventually. But right now, it's about getting those motions and making sure we don't do anything that's unnecessary. Because one movement up when you should have gone down or when you shouldn't have moved can really set everything out of control. So let's go ahead and take a look at the end now. What we're going to do from that is we play the 2 on the C, which we just played that D chord. So we're going to play the 2 on the C, and then we're going to do a down strum on an E minor chord. That's a 0, 4, 3, 2. Then we're going to chunk. We're going to do that D chord, down, chunk, and then up on a G chord. Same fill that we usually do, up, down, and then the 3 on the E, and then the 0 E. And then we're going to do a down strum on that same E minor, chunk, down on the D, chunk, then up on the G, and hold it, because that's the last chord of the song. Now, just like I talked about with the beginning section, I think it's incredibly important to make sure that that E minor chord is played right on that down strum, when normally we don't play it in that exact spot. And this is because we're trying to really enunciate this melody to close it out. So the pickup into 43 should sound like. Pretty cool. So now try to work through all of these different sections and understand that they are really designed to be at different skill levels. And the hope is that wherever you're at with your playing, you can find parts that are relatively easy to play and have things that are much more challenging and be able to work into it. Really the goal is that this song is almost in 2 different parts, with a beginner section and more advanced section. And it just so happens to be that the beginner section is more of kind of the calm way of playing it, and the advanced is more energetic. And when you combine those two, it makes a really nice arrangement, because it creates this nice flow of buildup of energy. And I think it's a great tribute to Tom Petty and his music, in that we're starting really nice and somber and building up the energy as we go. So if you haven't already, please check out the other videos that I've done. We've got some other tutorial videos. All of them are linked down below, and you can find all the tab and other information on my Patreon page. And be sure to check it out to vote on whatever we're going to work on for next month's song. The holidays are coming up, so maybe we'll want to work on something like that. So check it out, and I'll see you guys soon.